Every month you're waiting if you're going to break even.
This is Carolina. She runs one of the most difficult and dangerous small businesses in America.
We just always said they put up a hoop, we learn how to jump it, they set it on fire, they raise it, and we constantly jump through that hoop.
Carolina operates Bristol Women's Health, an independent abortion clinic right on the border of Virginia, where abortion is legal, and Tennessee, where it was banned in 2022.
Tennessee's trigger laws, set to go into effect in the next 2 weeks, will criminalize performing abortions across the state.
If a doctor gives one, they would be looking at 3 to 15 years in prison.
Since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, 65 abortion clinics have closed. But here's the thing, clinics were closing before the decision as well.
If this clinic closes, Kentucky would be the first state in the country without an abortion provider.
The last abortion clinic in Mississippi.
A Christian fundamentalist group is trying to close the state's last abortion clinic.
And that has a ripple effect for all reproductive health.
The reality is that folks really don't have access to care when health centers close. And that has only become more exacerbated because of the Dobbs decision.
Enshrining the rights of Roe is critical, but just as critical is the need to build more abortion clinics in America. Providers in states without bans are struggling to meet the increase in demand, and there are ways we can support them right now. This is The Classroom for More Perfect Union, and we're spending a day with the workers at Bristol to see just how hard it is to run an abortion clinic. So right now we're driving from Tennessee into Virginia. Tennessee has one of the strictest bans on abortion in the entire country. There's 21 states right now that have partial or full bans on abortion, and Virginia's the only state in the South that doesn't. And right across the border is Bristol Women's Health.
Bristol Women's Health, this is Terry, may I help you?
This is Terry, who runs the front desk.
Distressed is an understatement. These poor girls are terrified when they call. Half of them are upset and crying. I mean, they need a little old lady. So that's kind of what I do. I'm the little old lady and I get free hugs.
12 patients came in that day and many more called with questions. Last year, 1 in 5 people seeking abortion had to cross state lines to get care.
I've always felt the way I feel about it. It is no one else's decision but the person dealing with it. I've got family that don't speak to me because of the job I do. And we'll keep doing it.
Planned Parenthood might have the name recognition, but 55% of abortions in America are done in small, standalone clinics like this one. An abortion clinic isn't like a typical medical facility. It's not the care that's different. Abortions are a safe and routine procedure, but the barriers that states and cities create to make clinics harder to run. The first thing is just the cost of care. Most patients pay out of pocket because many private insurers are banned from covering abortion. And federal Medicaid, which 89 million people rely on for health insurance, doesn't cover abortion at all. This is because of the Hyde Amendment, named after pro-life Republican Henry Hyde. You might remember Joe Biden being questioned about his career-long support of the Hyde Amendment, which he changed his mind on in 2020.
If I believe health care is a right as I do, I can no longer support an amendment that makes that right dependent on someone's zip code.
The Hyde Amendment prohibited federal funding for abortion. It came just a few years after Roe, in 1977, and has been reenacted every year since.
American rights are often what are called negative constitutional rights, meaning you have a right for the government to leave you alone, but you don't actually affirmatively have a right to do anything.
Only 17 states allow Medicaid coverage for abortion, and 11 states don't even allow private insurance coverage. So clinics like the one in Bristol rely on a network of privately donated funds and often have to subsidize the cost of patient care themselves.
We wouldn't be here without funding organizations because this is sometimes the price of a medical abortion or surgical abortion is not attainable.
We need to zoom out and talk about why abortions are provided in standalone clinics at all. Roe v. Wade made abortion a constitutional right, but abortions didn't become a part of regular health care. When Roe became law in 1973, 50% of abortions were taking place in hospitals, but that changed quickly.
One of the main initiatives of the post-Roe abortion rights movement was starting clinics.
Many hospitals and the physicians working there didn't want to provide the procedure. It was politically risky. Hospitals could jeopardize their funding if they performed abortions. And it was politically divisive. Hospitals didn't want to deal with protesters. So standalone clinics were seen as an alternative way to give comprehensive, affirming care to patients in need. By 1989, the number of hospitals providing abortion care shrank, and 86% of abortions were happening in clinics. But the boom of standalone clinics had an unintended consequence. They were easier to target.
Operation Rescue, the radical anti-abortion group.
Operation Rescue was one of the most infamous anti-abortion organizations in the 1980s and 90s. From 1988 to 1992, they staged hundreds of blockades of clinics.
There were always protests and pickets outside of any facility performing abortions, even when hospitals were doing it all the way back into the 60s. But the degree of risk seemed to grow a lot in the 1980s. By the 1990s, things became even more dire because that was when you had a rash of abortion doctors being killed.
Dr. George Tiller was shot and killed in church yesterday. For years, Tiller was a lightning rod for abortion rights opponents, and his murder is sparking new fears for the safety of other abortion providers, some of whom are now being offered federal protection.
George Tiller was a mass murderer, and horrifically, he reaped what he sowed.
Patients arrive and find protesters outside, but the clinic has 3 defenders who are there to escort them inside: Barb, Danny, and Jesse.
These people, are deprived of a normal healthcare visit because of how it's gone hideously wrong in the last 20 years.
Somebody should be here to say, it's okay, whatever you choose, whatever your reason is. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to make it just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit, and I won't even say easier because it doesn't make it easier. It just says, you're not a horrible person, and it's okay.
As the anti-abortion movement grew, and as pickets and blockades continued, so did the stigma around the procedure. This stigma produces unexpected costs.
Unless you own your real estate, it's hard to get somebody to rent to you. They may say even, we support in what you do, just not here, just not in our building.
It can be challenging just to get basic repairs and contractors who will do the work.
They have absolutely no problems going into a dentist office, but they may not want to come to an abortion clinic.
The state of Virginia has additional restrictions. Only board-certified physicians are allowed to perform abortions, which studies have shown isn't medically necessary. Nurses and physician assistants are just as qualified. Laws like this are sometimes known as trap laws, targeted regulation of abortion providers. In the 2000s, anti-abortion activists designed laws that could be replicated state by state.
New laws limiting abortion have been enacted in North Carolina, Missouri, and of course, Texas.
That 2013 law required all abortion clinics to be built to the standards of an ambulatory surgical center.
These new regulations were pitched as common sense and for the safety of women, but instead just made abortions much harder to access. Clinics would have to go through expensive renovations to qualify as surgical centers, even though abortions are minimally invasive. Providers would be required to get special certifications, and they would have to get admitting privileges at local hospitals. That means a provider has to have access to a local emergency room. It's extremely rare for an abortion to lead to hospitalization, but 7 states required this new regulation. And because a lot of hospitals are Catholic-run, many refuse to work with abortion providers. According to the Guttmacher Institute, 83 clinics closed between 2011 and 2017 in states that passed trap laws. This created healthcare deserts across the Midwest and South, which have only gotten worse since Dobbs.
So now we're going to Knoxville, Tennessee. Carolina used to have a clinic there. It had been there since 1973 when Roe became law. And for a long time, there were only 2 clinics in East Tennessee where you could get an abortion. And one was Carolina's and the other one was the Planned Parenthood. But in 2021, that place was burned down.
On December 31st, the Knoxville Planned Parenthood building erupted in flames.
Now at 5, Knoxville fire officials say a fire at a Knoxville Planned Parenthood clinic was intentionally set.
Violence against clinics has risen sharply since the Dobbs decision. Clinic workers have reported stalking, burglaries, protesters blocking patients from entering facilities, and death threats. The Knoxville Planned Parenthood is now operating out of a mobile clinic, a repurposed bus that the clinic workers drive. When I met them, they were parked in a Lutheran church in West Knoxville.
If a health center closes, right, in a lot of ways we are really, for some folks, the only care that they will get throughout the year. So the reality is that sort of safety net provider goes away.
This just gives us the ability to keep an eye out on our surroundings. We've been really blessed. The church has been wonderful that we're parked at. And with all the construction guys, they kind of keep an eye out for us too. and we've not really had any pushback that we felt.
The Planned Parenthood is rebuilding on their original site, but won't reopen until the summer of 2024. The mobile clinic no longer provides abortions, but they do provide birth control, STI testing, and gender-affirming care for trans men and women.
Medical care for so many people is a scary thing. And being a LGBT person and not having doctors who understand is really, it's hard to find places where you feel safe.
In states that are hostile to abortion providers, it's much harder to get other forms of reproductive health care. OBGYNs are leaving banned states, and hospitals are having trouble recruiting new doctors. 5.6 million women now live in what's known as a maternal health desert. Carolina has worked in reproductive health care since 2007, and she knows this work can be an uphill battle. 3 months after she opened the clinic in Bristol, the city tried to pass an ordinance that would prohibit any new clinics from opening.
We weren't welcome with open arms, obviously, but I mean, we're here.
There are pros and cons of having these indie clinics and clinics like Planned Parenthood. Like Chris mentioned, clinics can be a space for safety and trust for people who have trouble accessing healthcare. But relying on specialized clinics can make healthcare less accessible. More people live near a hospital than live near an abortion clinic. There are many ways states and the federal government could increase access and keep clinics open, even in a post-Roe world. More medical professionals can be trained to perform abortions and other OBGYN care. Trap laws that still exist, like waiting periods and unnecessary certifications, can be repealed. Federal Title X funding provides STI and reproductive health care for millions of Americans, but can be expanded even more as demand increases in states that still allow abortion. Carolina also says that more people should talk about abortion, because it is essential health care.
We have had more interest in abortion care since Roe fell, and I hope in my lifetime that we're not special. I hope in our lifetime we just become a normal part of healthcare.
Thanks for watching The Classroom from More Perfect Union. This video was part of our series about jobs in America that have gotten worse over the last few decades. If there's another industry you want to see us cover, just comment below, and as always, like and subscribe for more videos like this one.